Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to part two of What If Rome Never Fell. Now, as I said, this is part two, so if you haven't seen part one, please watch it because otherwise, part two will not really make sense. Anyways, this is about, of course, what if the Roman Empire never fell. And so I hope you will enjoy this episode too. So the year is 686. Eastern Rome, although not completely at peace, has been past the worst of it that happened between 600 and 650, so the first half of the 7th century, during which the empire collapsed and it lost more land than it ever had in all of history. But the Eastern Romans are not just done yet, and this year begins the invasion of Armenia from the newly established Umayyad Caliphate, though the results are mixed. In 689, Eastern Rome invades the northern Levant and begins pushing, but by 691 is pushed back. In 694, in fact, Eastern Rome is also forced to retreat from Armenia. Now, the Umayyad Caliphate does not like having its territory attacked, and so it begins a counteroffensive into even more Eastern Roman territory. They invade Tunisia and Algeria in 697, and by 698, the entirety of North Africa is lost. This is a major, major blow to the Eastern Romans. Between the Romans and the Eastern Romans, Africa has been in their control for about 8 centuries, and now none of it is under Roman control at all. In fact, between 707 and 709, the very last Eastern Roman outpost in Morocco is conquered. Just 2 years later, in 711, the Umayyad conquest of Hispania begins, and at the Battle of Guadalete, the king of the Visigoths, Roderick, is killed. By 718, the conquest of Hispania ends successfully, and the following year, the Umayyad invasion of Gaul begins as their army crosses the Pyrenees. It looks like they are unstoppable and that they will take over the entire European continent. In 720, Narbonne, the capital of the remnant of the kingdom of the Visigoths, is conquered, bearing more bad news for the very demoralized Christians who have experienced nothing but loss for the previous century towards the Muslims. But in 721, Odo the Great, the Duke of Aquitaine, defeats the Umayyads at the Battle of Toulouse, and in 732, an attempted Umayyad conquest of Aquitaine is stopped by this very same Odo, along with Charles Martel, at the Battle of Tours, prompting the invasion of Europe and the Umayyad conquest of the continent to come to a screeching halt. Now this is a major victory for the Franks, and for the first time since the kingdom of the Franks collapsed 82 years later, it is reunited with Charles Martel as its king. In 751, however, Eastern Rome loses the greatest prize. No, it is not Africa. No, it's not even Jerusalem. In 751, Eastern Rome loses the very city it is named after, Rome, to the kingdom of the Lombards under Aistulf. Pope Zachary then realizes that the Eastern Romans are not reliable as defenders of the Eternal City, and instead he appeals to the Franks, who, as I explained, although of course the ruling class are not really Roman, is still considered a mostly Roman state. Now, because of this, the Carolingian dynasty under Pepin the Short comes to full prominence, and this is blessed by the Pope Zachary in exchange for protection. Now, Pepin does not renege on his word. In 754, he begins his war against the Lombards, and by 756, he has driven them out of Rome. A grateful Pope Stephen II then proclaims Pepin as the Western Roman Emperor. And because of this, we once again have two Roman empires. In 768, after his death, the Western Roman Empire, sadly, is divided once again between his two sons, Charlemagne and Carloman I. Between 772 and 804, Charlemagne conquers the Saxons during the Saxon Wars. Meanwhile, in 772, Pope Adrian I, at his accession, demands that King Desiderius of the Lombards return former Roman territory to the Western Romans, and this is rejected. The following year, Carloman I then decides to expand his territory by enforcing the Pope's demand and besieging their capital at Pavia. In 774, Pavia falls, and Carloman I becomes king of the Lombards. Meanwhile, in 778, Charlemagne conquers northern Spain from Cordoba, and Carloman conquers the western edge of the Avar Khaganate. In 785, meanwhile, back in eastern Rome, it begins its expansion by conquering the part of Greece that had been taken over by the Slavs. In 788, the Avar Wars break out between Carloman I and the Avars when they invade Bavaria and northeastern Italy. And in 796, the Pannonian March is established as a buffer state against attacks coming towards the Romans. Now, a monumental shift happens in 797 as Irene of Athens becomes the very first Eastern Roman regnant empress. And so this changes everything, as the Romans have never had an empress. In the year 800, Carloman I dies, allowing Charlemagne to reunite the Western Roman Empire at last. To celebrate Christmas, he has the very best gift he could ask for on Christmas and gets the Eastern Roman Empire as his present by marrying Queen Irene of Athens. And because of this, he is finally crowned Western Roman Emperor once again in Rome. 2 years later, Irene dies. And Charlemagne, who knows, maybe he's sad, but I think he's happy, because now he has become the emperor of both Western and Eastern Rome. And because of this, he reunites the two empires as one, known not this time as the Roman Empire, but as the Holy Roman Empire, because he has the sanction of the Church. Now, Charlemagne is not idle. The following year, in 803, Croatia is made a Roman vassal, while at the same year, Serbia is established as a state. In 805, Bohemia and Moravia are also established as Roman vassals. And between 804 and 806, Rome conquers what's left of the Avar Khaganate. Now, in 814, Charlemagne dies, and he is succeeded by his son, Louis the Pious. And his reign starts with the first Viking raids. You know, something which probably will never become an issue in the future, of course. Between 827 and 843, the disasters continue, as the Aghlabid Emirate takes over most of Sicily. In 833, Moravia rebels and gains independence. In 840, Louis, although a very pious and Christian man, is not a very effective emperor, and he dies. And he is succeeded by his son, Lothair I. But this is contested by his brothers, Charles the Bald and Louis the Greek. In 843, the Holy Roman Empire, sadly, after only 43 years of existence, is divided by the Treaty of Verdun between Western Rome, led by Charles, Middle Rome, led by Lothair, and Eastern Rome, led by Louis. But between 846 and 850, Charles conquers both Middle and Eastern Rome and reunites the Holy Roman Empire. And so, the empire reunites. In 882, the Roman-Moravian War breaks out. 2 years later, the war ends, with Moravia actually winning, conquering Bohemia, which had been a Roman vassal. Meanwhile, in 883, a new state emerges in Europe, known as the Kievan Rus. Between 895 and 900, another barbarian group attacks the Roman borders, these ones being known as the Magyars, and under the new leader Arpad, they invade the Pannonian Basin and found the Principality of Hungary. Throughout the 910s, Galicia, Leon, Navarre, Capua, Naples, Salerno, Croatia, Serbia, and Bohemia all become Roman vassals. But sadly, in 914, those pesky Vikings actually begin to take Roman territory and take over Brittany. Now, between 920 and 925, Rome begins expanding again and reaches the Kievan border, conquering eastern Serbia and eastern Germany all the way up to the Oder as well. Now, the Kievan Rus aren't so fond of this new empire on their border, and so a Roman-Rus war breaks out. But after 2 years, this results in a Roman victory, and the Kievan Rus actually become a Roman vassal. Now, in 939, Brittany is also conquered from the Vikings. But another new Slavic state is soon to emerge, one known as Poland, which is established in 960. 2 years later, a new emperor rises in Rome, one who will be known as the Great, and one who will make Rome proud once again. His name is Otto, and he immediately begins expanding. Between 964 and 965, Rome conquers Cilicia. In 968, Antioch is put to siege, and the following year is taken from the Emirate of Aleppo. Between 969 and 971, Kievan Rus goes to war, but sadly they gain independence. However, Rome is able to make Croatia and Serbia vassals. Now we reach the new millennium, and because of this is where I will end. With an expanding Roman Empire, one which has many victories, but a few defeats as well. What will happen next? How will the second millennium fare for Rome? This is no small question, since we will be covering the next 1,000 years, and I guess 22 years too, of history in the following episodes. Of course, if you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.